Machiavelli's Hacks to Control Any Woman. We're going to break down the system of dark psychology it lays out, look at the core concepts, and really understand how they're supposed to work. Let's get into it. So, right out of the gate, we're hit with this really powerful, kind of counterintuitive idea. The goal isn't to be liked, it's to be unforgettable. The source basically argues that all the conventional dating advice fails because it's built on just being agreeable. This system, it's aiming for something completely different, creating a permanent psychological impact. So here's our roadmap for today. We're going to start with the core premise, then we'll get into the key tactics: fear, image, and this idea of duality. From there, we'll look at the strategy of absence, and then wrap it all up with the ultimate goal, becoming what the source calls a turning point. Okay, first up, the source really starts by defining a problem it wants to solve. It creates this idea of the average man and argues that his entire approach is basically destined to fail from the start. And this slide really lays out that core difference, right? The average man is playing on the surface level. He's using gifts, his charm. He's basically performing. And the video claims this makes him totally forgettable. The unforgettable man, on the other hand, is playing a different game entirely. It's all psychological. His focus is on controlling the emotional landscape and creating an obsession that actually gets stronger when he's not around.
So that foundation leads us straight into the first, and honestly, probably the most provocative, pillar of this whole framework: the strategic use of fear. And this is it. This is the big quote from Machiavelli that the entire argument is built on. Now, it's a really uncomfortable idea for sure, but the video argues that if you stop listening to what people say and start watching how they actually behave, this principle reveals a much deeper truth about what drives attraction and respect.
Now, this is super important. The source is very specific about what fear means here. This is the crucial part. It is not about intimidation, it's not aggression. Instead, it's framed as the fear of loss, the fear of losing a man who respects himself so much that he will just walk away from disrespect, no drama, no hesitation. The power, it argues, comes from the threat of his absence, not from his presence.
So this slide kind of breaks down the logic of how this is supposed to work. According to the source, love that's just handed over with no challenge just becomes background noise. The real power comes from having firm, unspoken boundaries. You know, the man who doesn't need her validation to feel whole. That's what creates this irresistible pull. And the fear of losing that unshakable presence is what this framework claims can turn simple attraction into a full-blown obsession.
Okay, next, the framework shifts from your internal mindset to your external presentation. The argument here is that how you are perceived is way more powerful than who you actually are. And this Machiavellian idea is really the key to this next part. Attraction, it says, operates on the level of appearance and perception. The argument is that people don't respond to your hidden inner self, they respond to the image that you consciously project to the world.
So what does this actually mean in practice? It means you have to treat attraction less like a logical debate and more like an emotional, energetic scan. The source claims it's not about lying, but about framing. You have to consciously control your posture, your tone, your reactions, all to project an image of certainty and power, no matter how you might be feeling on the inside.
This next concept uses a really powerful metaphor to describe the kind of psychological balance you need to have. The idea is you have to be both the lion and the fox.
Okay, so let's break this down. On one side, you've got the lion. This is your raw power, your unshakable presence, the strength to enforce your boundaries without getting angry. The lion protects your respect. And then on the other side, you have the fox. This is your intelligence, your strategy. The fox doesn't get sucked into emotional traps or pointless arguments. It observes, it waits, and it protects your mind.
And the source is really clear here. Balance is everything. A man who is only a lion comes off as unstable, easily provoked. A man who is only a fox can seem clever, but ultimately spineless. It's the unpredictable mix of that silent strength and strategic calm that the video claims is the real hook.
Okay, next we're getting into one of the most potent tactics in this entire playbook, using absence to create a psychological void.
The video lays this out as a really clear three-step process. First, when you feel like you're being taken for granted, you just disappear. And crucially, you do it without any anger or explanation. This creates a void, and because the human mind hates a vacuum, it immediately tries to fill it by replaying every single interaction, searching for clues. According to the video, this constant speculation is what transforms you from just a person into an unresolved question, and that becomes the seed of obsession.
And this brings us to the final and maybe the most ambitious goal of this whole Machiavellian framework that's presented in the source material.
So the end game here isn't a conventional relationship. It's about achieving a psychological impact so profound that you literally become a permanent fixture in her life story. You're the person who triggered a fundamental shift in how she sees herself in the world.
So how do you do that? Well, according to the video, it's not about big, flashy gestures. It's all about psychological precision. By challenging her beliefs, by seeing past her social mask, and by demonstrating that you have unshakable standards, you become unforgettable. You become the man who is forever tied to her personal transformation, a permanent part of her inner story.
And that really brings us to the big question hanging over all of this, right? Are these techniques a blueprint for emotional manipulation? Or are they a framework for developing such deep self-respect that you naturally just become a powerful force in people's lives? The source material definitely frames it as self-respect, but in the end, the interpretation is really left up to you.